ti dimentichi dei poveri. E quella parola è entrata qui, i poveri, i poveri.
Jobs, cooking, cleaning, bathing, toileting, looking after the daily needs of children and the elderly. Respect or access to high-level decision-making to women who spend their lives providing care.
Make proposals as village. Our village is called Work and Care. So
to this second webinar of the economy of Francesco.
Everything that you did to the smallest of my brothers, you did for me. This is what animates everything that I do.
So we want to get everybody over the social foundation into the green donut ring itself. Nobody left behind in the hole is the need to distribute the capacity to generate wealth. And again, thank you, Sophie, for this beautiful, beautiful image of capturing.
Hi everyone, it's such a pleasure and honor to have Professor Sachs with us, so thank you for being here.
It's important to start with the ancients, with the Greeks, and with the ideas of happiness, and to understand how the message from the ancient Greeks, from Jesus at the Sermon on the Mount.
Thank you again, Professor Cabra.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here to enhance the good growth and diminish the bad growth. Now, from an ecological point of view, this distinction between good growth and bad growth is obvious. As I said in my presentation, that this idea of unlimited growth on a finite planet is completely irrational.
Come agisce anche in quei paesi, viste le esigenze differenti, il movimento di Slow Food?
Grazie a te, perché questo mi dà l'opportunità di mettere in evidenza una questione molto importante.
La lente di ingrandimento, il tema dell'agricoltura. Con la tua produzione
si cerca la qualità, la quantità rispetto alla qualità. Siamo arrivati a una situazione insostenibile, veramente non è più possibile pensare che questo sistema alimentare possa continuare a fare tanti danni.
Hello, welcome to this seminar. Professor, can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Welcome to this seminar. This is the seminar number 7 of the On Life seminar, Moving Towards a Post-COVID Better World series. This seminar is organized by the Village on Life and Lifestyle, of which I'm part. And before going ahead, just some practical info. This seminar is in English, but you can also follow the seminar in Italian, Spanish, and Portuguese. So in the YouTube channel, you can find the link and choose your preferred language. The topic of today is the environmental crisis and the Covid-19 pandemic, what we must learn for the future. Well, it's a very important topic, and basically we are going to write some questions. We are going to ask if there are any linkages between environmental factor and the spreading of the coronavirus, and if yes, which policies can be adopted, and what can we do, and also if there are any trade-off between very important dimensions of our life, like the economy, the economic system, the health system, and the environmental system. If there are these trade-offs, can we identify such trade-off, and if yes, which policies can be settled? Today with us, we have as keynote speakers Leonardo Becchetti, full professor of political economy at University of Rome Tor Vergata, and Francesco Sallustri from the University College London. They wrote two papers recently on that topic, and they will share with us some of the results they just discovered. In addition to our fantastic keynote, we will have some of the young participants to our village, and we decide to devote the second part of the seminar to the discussion. And 4 young participants to our village, Nicole, Julia, Leo, and Philippe, will discuss about the topic of today. And last but not least, we have also Giorgio Vacchiano, who is researcher in forest management, so he's expert in environmental and forest management from the University of Milan, and he will lead the discussion. So, I mean, the topic is rich, and we have also a lot of keynotes and a lot of speakers. So I will give the floor to Francesco Sallustri for the presentation, and thank you, Francesco and Leonardo, for being there. Thank you. Francesco, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Thanks. And thank you very much to the organizing committee. It's a great pleasure for us to be at this such a nice event. So let me start. Can you see the slides?
Yes, yes, Francesco, it's okay.
So let me start from the very beginning of our research. So our research started when we observed the first cases of COVID-19 in Italy, which happened late in February this year in the northern region, more precisely in Lombardy, in a region located in the north of Italy. And we asked, after we observed the first cases and then the following cases, why we observed at the end, week by week, we observed such a geographical difference. So a lot of cases and a lot of death in the north, and very few cases and death in the south of Italy. So if you look at China, China is of course very, very large. You also observe a geographical distribution of cases. But if you look at Italy, you observe a very similar distribution, while Italy is much smaller, almost 1.5 the size of Hubei, the most affected region in China. So there are 2 alternative theories to this geographical difference. One assumes that the spread of the virus began when and where the first cases were detected. Therefore, you observe more cases in the place where you observed the first case, that is the north of Italy. The other theory assumes that the virus was circulating in Italy and in Europe in general before the first cases were detected. And a number of researchers have been publishing in the last few weeks, discovering that the virus was already circulating, not only before we observed the first cases, but also before we observed the first cases in China, so in November and December 2019. So if we assume the second theory holds, we should explain why we observe such a geographical difference in a small country like Italy. One of the first research linking environment and more particularly pollution as measured by particulate matter and COVID cases in terms of cases and death has been published late in April in the US, and shows that the most polluted areas, the most polluted cities in the US are also the cities which experience a higher number of cases and deaths of COVID-19. So this is the upper map is the map of pollution in the US, and the lower map is number of deaths of COVID-19 deaths late in April, and this is the number of deaths yesterday in the US. Other researchers have been published in other countries, like in Italy, suggesting that pollution may play an important role in the spreading of the virus. In Germany, this is a more recent research, and another in China, and also in other countries. And more importantly, these researchers have been written by a number of different scholars, not only by physicians or epidemiologists, but also by economists or other scientists. So it's very multidisciplinary research. The hypothesis that pollution may affect the number of cases and death of COVID-19 is very standard in medicine. Particulate matter have been it has been already demonstrated that particulate matter affects our health, and in particular is linked with a number of chronic diseases. Particulate matter affects lungs, and through lungs may also alter cardiac functions or blood functions in general. Among this research, which has already been published before COVID-19, and in many countries like in the US, in China, or in Canada, two of them were already published in Wuhan and in Milan, in the north of Italy. So I'll give the floor to Leonardo now, who will speak about our research in more details.
Thank you, Francesco. So first of all, I want to say that this has been a great team endeavor. I hope that you can see my presentation now. You see? Yes. So I really thank Francesco, Gianluigi, Pierluigi, because we enjoyed a lot this work. And this is basically, there are two sides. One side is the effect of pollution, air quality on COVID in Italian province. And another one is what happens in park. You know, in Italy, there are many municipalities who have a park area, regional park, national park. So we wonder whether the number of contagions and diseases were less in the area with park than in the area without park. So that's basically the two main issues. If you look at this descriptive, we have done a lot of econometric refinements, but if you look just at descriptive statistics, this is impressive. On the left-hand side, you see the concentration of deaths at national level, and you can see there they are in Lombardia. On the central part, you see the list, the ranking of province in terms of number of COVID diseases per 1,000 inhabitants. And you see that mainly all province of Lombardia are on the top. But the first ranked, which is Cremona, is also the first ranks in the ranking at the right-hand side, which is the ranking for days in which the concentration of particulate matter overcame the thresholds and therefore led to a block of traffic. This is Cremona, which is the highest at all. So basically what we did, we look at this data on average values measured from the monitoring post of PM 2.5, PM 10. You know, the particulate matter has different sides. And also we looked at the nitrogen dioxide, which is another very important polluter. This is the map of again, of the distribution of deaths and contagion cases, confirmed cases. And as you can see, the concentration in the north and especially in Lombardia. And this is the map of the average level of PM 2.5 and PM 10. Remember that our research policies is ex ante concentration exposure to particulate matter, long-term exposure, okay? So we look at data from the previous year, average data from the previous year. This is another interesting picture. On the left-hand side, again, you have deaths per inhabitants, but on the right-hand side, you have a distribution of the municipalities containing park areas in Italy. And you can see a complementarity between the two pictures. The red area are quite in different area with respect to the blue area. So again, this will help us to focus on our research. Here you have I would go to this point. This is the daily track of deaths in park municipalities versus non-park municipality. And important things to say, we know that there have been a lot of bias in measuring contagions, deaths. That depends a lot on also on political reasons and also on the pressure that there was on hospital in the worst days. So basically, this affected a lot. Lots of people were not controlled. They remained at home. Some people, unfortunately, they even died at home without just knowing after that they had the COVID. So basically, there are a lot of problems in this data. What we did, we took National Statistical Institute's data on total deaths in the days of the coronavirus compared with the deaths of the same days of the previous 2 years as an average. So basically, in this way, we cleaned our data. Of course, we control these results, and we see that our results are robust also using the other data. So that's actually the slide saying what I was saying before, okay? The problem with official contagion and the problem with COVID deaths, okay? And that's our measure. So basically, we looked at the factor. Of course, whenever I explain a phenomenon, that the skeptic people say, yes, I know someone who was a smoker and he died at 100 years old. Of course, this can happen. When we explain a phenomenon, we can explain like 50–60%. There are exceptions, and especially what we find is that what we obtain is a combination of different factors. So lockdown were important, the efficiency of the local health sectors were important, but as we show, also air pollution is important. So we compare the relative impact of pollution vis-a-vis the other factor. We use a lot of different techniques. We don't want to go now into the technical detail, cross-section, pooled, fixed effect, EV estimates, basically because we want to find causality. X causes Y, air pollution causes deaths, or is a factor increasing deaths and contagion. We look at several different things, outlier, weekly data, and you can see everything in the paper. I don't want you now to enter into all the details because I want to go to the policy solution of the paper. But consider that in terms of magnitude, we find that several hundreds and even thousands of deaths and of contagions are explained by difference in the quality of air. Okay, then we also made a comparison between what would have happened without the lockdown and with the lockdown, and we found the lockdown was very effective in reducing the gravity of the pandemic. So, and we show that the lockdown was more effective to reduce the gravity of the pandemic in the more polluted areas. We control for the outlier in order to avoid that our results just depend on some specific case, some specific provinces, and it works. We even calculated the famous road zero, but I don't want now to go into this detail because it's really boring. But what I want to go is to the policy, okay? So one nice issue raised tomorrow by Francesco, he found that even in the discussion between the effect of smoking on cancer, at the beginning there was a lot of skepticism. A lot of people say, yeah, it's correlation, but it's not causality. That's exactly what people are saying today. And remember that in any case, particulate matter, according to the World Health Organization, make 219 deaths per day only in Italy. So they were considered harmful even before the coronavirus. What we found now is that another reason why they are harmful. Okay, so basically, what are the policies? First, where do particulate matter comes from? It comes from heating, house heating, it comes from transportation, it comes from industry, it comes from agricultural production. Only 10% of it is outside our control because it depends on meteorological factors, okay? Even in the days of lockdown, there were some days with the very high particulate matter just because there was a perturbation from Africa or from somewhere. But basically, 90% is under our control. So what we have to do? We have to improve the way we heat our houses. We have to change transportation. We have to use electric, hybrid, reduce the production of particulate matter of transportation. We have to improve the way we produce in energy, in industry, and in agriculture. Okay, so let me say something about my experience now. I put another hat. In these months, I am economic advisor of the Ministry of the Environment and coordinator of the Regional Task Force for Resilient Recovery of Regione Lazio. So I had the privilege and the opportunity to see how national and regional policymakers are trying to tackle this particular crisis. And my point with them was to say two images. First images, like when you were young and you went on this kind of car, you know that when you went to hit you jumped back and you were going to hit exactly on the same point if you were not quick enough to turn off the wheel, to change direction. So we have to change direction. What do we need? Sustainable, resilient, generative recovery. But we cannot do that if people is unemployed, if there is an economic crisis, because people will go on the streets. There will be again yellow vest. So we need balls that can hit 6 pins at a time. Okay. So what I mean, what are the 6 pins? We must create economic value. We must create employment. We must reduce environmental risk. We must reduce pandemic risk. We must be richer of time, and we must be rich of sense of life, because our goal of civil economics is generativity, sense of life. We discovered that the happiness of people depends mainly on how their life can impact other human lives. So what do we mean? First point, we learned, we have a massive exercise of smart work. And of course, we want to meet again, we want to have again direct contacts, but still we have to learn this lesson. Smart work can help us to make a lot of things and gives us extra time. And this extra time can be good, can make us rich of time, can improve our relationships. So in the future, we must become entrepreneurs of our time and able to combine during the day in a better way work, education, care, and leisure. So this is one of the main policy issues today. Again, what we are doing, okay, first, we want to, this is really a ball hitting 6 pins. Efficient house restructuring, 110 tax rebates in Italy for 2-notch progress in the energy efficiency scale if you restructure your building. This is very good because the construction industry is one who creates a lot of jobs. And so anyone in Italy now can do that. And by doing that, it will reduce the production of particulate matter. It will make house heating more energy efficient. Another point, I know that all young people are very strong on this point. We were with people of Friday for Future, and they said, let us remove environmentally harmful subsidies, 19 billion in Italy. Of course, but you cannot just say, otherwise you will kill farmers, you will kill lorry drivers. So you need to create policies which are at zero cost. Basically, you must say to this, that's what we are doing in Italy. You must say to these people, I will keep the money you expected to get from this subsidy, but this money is not related anymore with the fossil fuel. So the next time, buy another product, more energy efficient products, and you don't get any advantage anymore from the fossil fuel. That's our approach. Then sustainable transportation, remove incentive to scrap Euro 0, Euro T, the 2 more polluting engines, and change also the mean of transports, powered bicycle, scooters, but also renovation of van and hybrid and electric van and car. We create a governmental dashboard. This is very important. This is the work we are doing today. We have to measure things. This is our dashboard. 6 simple K indicator: water footprint, carbon footprint, material circularity index, consistent with the European Union goals of sustainable development. All companies must have this dashboard. This is very important. It will be important for allowing people voting with the wallet, for green public procurement, for green bonds, to avoid greenwashing. Let us measure what companies do. And below you find our goals for future policy. I think that these 3-4 goals are crucial. First, Nothing will change if manager within the big company will keep on having bonus based on profits and price and without any regard to environmental and social sustainability. The bonus can be given only if the manager succeed also on social and environmental targets. This is very, very important things that we are trying to do in Italy. The green dashboard must be the tool for the non-financial corporate reporting. And also we need carbon tax, but carbon tax needs border adjustment. So we need that companies who make environmental dumping go in places where you can save on environmental taxes, cannot sell, cannot underbid, cannot sell at lower price their product, therefore pushing out of the market a more sustainable company. So the border green tax is very important. Now some final suggestions. I don't know if I ran out of time. How much time do I have? Francesco, Dalila, tell me.
No,
How long?
we are fine.
We are fine.
4 minutes, yeah, we're fine. No
5
worries.
minutes, yes.
Yes.
Last 3 things. We have also, so I can leave floor to question if you like. So we believe that the change will not come from top down. So you are young, you must make the change. You must be the change you want to see in the world. We can make the change. We have a very important issue that we call in Italy, vote with the wallet. What do we mean? We mean that the market is made by demand and supply. We are the demand. So we have the key of our chains. And what we have to do, we have to vote with the wallet when we buy. Whatever we buy, we must try to buy products of companies who are at the vanguard of the creation of socially and environmentally sustainable value. And we don't just say this. We created something in Italy. We created during the crisis a digital online platform which sells, which makes, we are very ambitious, which compete with Amazon, and creates a community and sell products of our champions in sustainability, inclusion, rehabilitation of prisoner, all the companies which combine quality of products with sustainability, social and environmental sustainability. And this challenge is doing very, very well, is going well in Italy. Again, another example of vote with the wallet. This product is in Italian shelves of supermarket since the end of June. The product is a product made by consumers. The first success was in France, where it has 3-4% of the market. The consumers don't just vote with the wallet, but they create their own product. They go to the producer, they get informed, they vote, and they decide the product with some characteristics where the wage for the producer is much higher, where the sustainability is higher, and then they put this product on the shelf. They save on brand cost, on advertisement cost. No brands, no advertisement. This is our product. We don't have to say anything more. And this is doing very well. Last but not least, I think that we are working with the people of Friday for Future. We are discussing with them many times. Our idea is that we must transform the energy of the Friday into the energy of the Saturday. On Friday, you do the mass manifestation, but on Saturday, you understand the change does not depend on the leader. The change depends on ourselves. So we start the change, we become actors of the change by voting with the wallet and by pushing, accelerating the change of company and of governments, a change that is already ongoing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Becchetti and also Francesco for the speech. It was really insightful, and I guess there is a lot of things to discuss. I would like to open the discussion, and we have the 4 guys from our village who will talk about this topic and what you said. And I just would like to remark that also Francesco Salustri is one of the members of our village, so it's not only from the co-author of the paper, but is also an active member of our village. So I would like to give the floor to Nicoli, and then Julia, then Filippo and Leo, and just at the end, Giorgio will sum up and propose his vision. So, Nicole, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to attend this speech and to be here. I'm Nicole, I'm Brazilian from Rio. I am a master's student in sociology and law at the Fluminense Federal University in Rio de Janeiro. I research migration and immigrant as a subject of law. So I would like to start my speech by establishing that I'm going to talk about Rio de Janeiro and that my speech is dedicated to minorities. By minority, I mean the Black, the Indigenous, the Swandalos, the women, the poor ones, and the immigrants who, in these particular times of the closing borders, are not able to immigrate and have the human rights violated. I speak from Brazil that is among the 10 most unequal countries in the world. I speak from Rio de Janeiro of inequalities. And in that pandemic context, these inequalities are more evident and exposed. The Rio de Janeiro of which I speak put in danger some groups of the population. It represents a risk for Marielle Franco, a Black woman, Swandaler, lesbian, consuwoman, who was cowardly murdered in the exercise of her mandate for defending the human rights of minorities. Until today, after more than 2 years of her murder, investigations have not been completed, and we still want to know who sent to kill Marielle Franco. I speak of Marielle among other reasons, not only because she was an important defender of the most vulnerable groups. I quote her mainly because, like Marielle, I am a woman, Brazilian, sociologist, and defending of human rights. It's from this place that I build my speech today. It's about Rio de Janeiro. It's Rio de Janeiro from Eco 92 and Rio Plus 20, which hosted two the most important environmental events. It's the same state that denies the simple choice for a large part of this population. The right to choose is denied to a portion of the population which at this time of pandemic, for example, cannot choose to safer and health the families and follow the recommendation from the World Health Organization. It's in this logic that the state produced naked life subject, quote the Italian to Giorgio Agamben. So I would like to draw attention to the 3 points that I will highlight, starting with the 3 most basic recommendations that the World Health Organization makes regarding coronavirus pandemic: avoid crowding, wash hands, and stay at home. Regarding to agglomeration, Rio de Janeiro, like other states in Brazil, doesn't nominate to keep its quarantine in effective operation. A large portion of the population needed to continue working. The state of Rio de Janeiro has 3 million informal workers. That means a lot of workers, such as street vendors, for example, who depend on daily income to support their families, walk around the city using crowd buses, trains, and subways. In the last month, we could see that the number of app workers has skyrocketed. On July the 1st, we had the first strike by app delivery workers in Brazil. The working conditions are extremely precarious and exploratory, to say the least. About the second recommendation, from the country, 84% of the population has access to treated water. It means that 35 million Brazilians don't have access to basic water services. Furthermore, I speak here, Brazil water is being privatized. In Rio de Janeiro, just before the pandemic started, We had on the most serious supply crisis in history, the population for this was being supplied by contaminated water. Obviously, the most affected were the poorest ones. Finally, the recommendation to stay at home doesn't now represent a real possibility for a considerable portion of the population, as I already said, but beyond that, being inside home, not guarantee of being safe. João Pedro, who is this 14-year-old boy, was murdered inside his house due to police shot. We know that his policy is the one that kills more and the one who dies more. In this war, almost everyone is black. João Pedro is not the first black boy who died by hands of the police shooting inside the favelas. And importantly, he was not the last one. The state doesn't guarantee its population the performance of those 3 basic recommendations by World Health Organization. But by that, I mean that at home, following the recommendation, there is no guarantee that your life will be preserved and that you will have water on tap to wash your hands. Moreover, stay at home. No possibility for a large part of Brazilians who need to continue working and using crowded means of transportation. I'm talking about in Brazil and in states that are both dangerous for those who are poor, black, slum-dwellers, women, indigenous, LGBTQI+, who murdered Marielle Franco, João Pedro, Agatha Félix, Miguel Otávio, Marcos Vinícius, and all the other Brazilian people that die every day, either by COVID, either by a shot, or by a misleading of this Brazil that is ruled by a genocidal president. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you. Julia.
Hi, thank you, Daniela. Thank you to the professors. It's really great to be here with you, and also great to be part of the economy of Francesco. I'm very happy to be here. And again, thanks for the very interesting work. I think it's really important because it casts light on the different personal and external factors that can lead us as individuals and essentially as groups of individuals with different characteristics to have different qualities of life. And the work also leads us to think about how inequalities arise, who is affected by the ecosystems around us, and how these ecosystems can interact with disadvantage. When I was reading these papers, it led me to think about how the environment is undervalued in our current economic assessments of prosperity or assessments of how well the economy is generally doing. You know, time and time again, including this research, we're seeing that the quality of natural capital, or generally the quality of the environment, is very important to the quality of our lives, to our health, to our well-being. So the thing is, when you use a measurement system that's underpinned mainly by monetary values such as GDP, which measures just the production of the economy, and if we use only this measure to reflect how our economy is progressing, then we're greatly undervaluing the role that nature plays in our prosperity, in our economic well-being. So this work that you talked about showed the correlation between heterogeneity and adverse health outcomes and levels of air pollution, and that leads us to think about how important it is to look at how these natural goods like air quality or quality of green spaces are distributed among individuals, and where and who is experiencing, you know, different levels of these things, because these things can tell us about where inequalities start to become systematic, or where inequalities can start to become structural and lead to unjust systems, unjust ecosystems more generally. You know, in the case of air pollution, like Professor Leonardo was saying, it's, you know, there's vulnerable people who already have a underlying health condition were doubly disadvantaged in the face of COVID. You know, firstly because they had the internal factor of the health condition, but then secondly because of how that health condition interacted with the environmental conditions that they were exposed to. So we're seeing that the different opportunity of individuals to access natural goods like air quality or like quality green spaces, it's exactly the place where inequalities can start to arise in our daily lives, even though it's a bit of a more hidden inequality. Because it means that not everyone has the same access to a good which can allow them to flourish, allow them to, you know, achieve, aim for greater economic well-being or human well-being. And it might be that the difference in opportunity to access these goods is particularly exacerbated for certain groups of individuals, for example, low-income groups. So in general, we can see that, you know, individual opportunity to access these things that allow us to flourish as individuals is a great source of inequality, and it's exactly where, you know, structural injustices can begin. So, you know, we know from this research, from other research, that natural capital, nature in general, is very important for our well-being. But then for policy implications, an important question is whether the environment, whether nature is being sufficiently valued in the economic framework that we use to assess our economic progress and prosperity. And if we continue to look only to the single unit of measurement, that's GDP, to reflect our economic growth, then the answer is no, because that measurement tool does not give us space to value nature in our lives. And this is problematic for how we've been using and degrading the environment unsustainably, because while we've been measuring changes to the level of our output year on year and seeing how that's reflecting our growth, we haven't been assessing, you know, how healthy the environment is year on year, and we haven't been seeing what the changes are and what our production is doing to the state of the environment. And we know there's other things too, apart from just the environment, that are important for our well-being. You know, the quality of our relationships of all different kinds are important too, and that's not being measured in our current economic framework. So the challenge that we all face is of shifting to a framework that understands economic prosperity as something broader than just based on material or monetary gains. And once we can think of a theoretical framework that takes these things into account, we should use this for our policy design, as Professor Leonardo was giving a few examples. You know, we don't need a new framework just for the sake of a new framework. We need it precisely to try and address the inequalities that are arising before they become structural and before they become injustices that become perpetuated. So this framework should be used for that, and it should be used for evaluating. Really, it's all about evaluating the distribution and the access, the real access that we have to these things, not just the existence of these things. I'll just finish off. Maybe a lot of us here at the Economy of Francesco, we are interested in what we can do. How can we bring this change about? So I guess the first thing we can do is try to think about what progress, what prosperity or flourishing actually genuinely means to us. And you know, we need to move beyond the material and monetary values at the base of our systems, and try and think, maybe we can try and think about how to value things not just in monetary terms, in some sort of have indications of our prosperity in other terms, like these dashboards, that the green dashboards that were mentioned earlier. And the second important thing we can do, I think, is make sure that the environment is always strongly present in all of our policy discussions. You know, to address inequalities systematically, we need nature to be present in all these discussions from the beginning. And I'll end there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you very much. And now, Philippe.
Bom dia a todos. Hello, companions. Good afternoon. So, at this moment, I am deeply grateful to all the people who participate in my process and who make up the essence of my being. And to you, who allow me to enter your home. And thank you very much. We are talking about the environment and the pandemic. And in this interlocution, I would like to ask you an initial question. How can we breathe in the face of the racism? How can it be different from what happened to Floyd on my birthday in this year, or Marielle Franco, or Luis Giovanni? The call for citizen compassion is urgent. I agree with Francesco in his appeal. In the 14th paragraph of Laudato Si, I launched an urgent invitation to renew the dialogue and the way we are building the future of the planet. Looking around you in this meeting, how many Black lives are involved? How many in the organization in that event? In Brazil, I remember 10% was a Black, in a country where more than 60% are Black. To live under contemporary occupation, to experience a permanent condition of living pain, say Achilles Mubambe. And by the way, why don't we have speakers like him also in the MIND seminars? More than ever, we need to expand institutional spaces and enable an open and honest dialogue with different voices in the world, resuming, civilizing facts. Coronavirus is linked to old problems, to capitalism in the silencing and the death of children and adolescents, Black, Indigenous, and women, the poor and the others. You can consider me radical, but Angela Davis wrote to say that it's necessary to grab the things at the roots. It's not enough not to be racist. It's necessary to be anti-racist so that brothers and sisters can breathe. The racial agenda is the basis for economy, law, politicals, and even the production of the social imaginary. It is defend democracy, a universal basic economy, a stable economic environment, an efficient public health system, an open and plural and emancipatory education. The global agrarian reform. We need to guarantee the sustainability of your bodies in every space of life. O God of the poor, touch the earth of Jews who seek only benefit at the expense of the poor and the earth. The poor and the earth are crying out, Lord, take use under your power and your light to protect the earth life, to prepare on better future, so that your kingdom of justice, peace, love, and beautiful might come. Praise you. I share. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Philippe. Thank you. We go for Leo.
Hello, can you see me? Yes, I think so.
Yes, we see you.
Hi. Thank you very much to the speakers, to Francesco and Leonardo, and to the Economy of Francesco for organizing this and inviting this discussion around what I think are really important issues. I hope I can kind of build on some of the things that have been said already. I wanted to kind of zoom out a little bit to think about some things that arose for me as I read through the papers we're discussing around land use. The current pandemic has already generated quite a bit of discussion around land use. In particular, some attention's been paid to how deforestation and other kinds of land use change have caused increasing transmission of diseases from animals to humans. This is the same as other notable disease outbreaks in the past few years, such as Ebola and SARS. Like those, COVID-19 has been thought to begin through human contact with wildlife. And research has shown that, has indicated that increases in this kind of transmission are driven by land use change in biodiversity hotspots around the world, bringing humans and livestock into contact with disease-bearing wildlife in ways that otherwise wouldn't happen. Reading these papers, I guess, with my mind on these things, I was struck by two things in particular, which reveal other ways in which matters of land use have a direct impact on human health, in which the current pandemic's exposed. The first is the finding that a greater extent of protected areas, such as national parks, have been associated with better regional health outcomes during the pandemic. And that's a really interesting finding, and that would seem to add in a compelling way to existing arguments for the preservation and extension of such protected areas on public health grounds. This kind of intervention, therefore, has a potential relevance to ongoing conversations around conservation as a response to the current environmental crisis. A second related thing that popped out to me was that this idea that poor air quality was closely correlated with incidence of disease and mortality during the recent pandemic. It's what struck me, although agriculture isn't noted as perhaps the highest contributor to this, it was noted as nevertheless a significant contributor. It's well documented within the scientific literature that spraying of fertilizers and pesticides, which are common practice in modern industrialized farming, contribute to elevated levels of certain kinds of particulates in the air. The findings of these papers, therefore, I think point to a further set of debates around the nature of our global food system and the kinds of intensive land use practices on which these are premised. In terms of policy responses, I think the question linking these findings to these debates around land use shows the complexity of these issues as well. The appropriate way to balance environmental goods such as the conservation of biodiversity and carbon sequestration with the need to feed 8 billion or more people on the planet remains highly contested within the scientific literature and within broader public discourse. The science is still not settled by any means on how we should do that, and there are many considerations which go beyond, which include political and economic concerns which relate to that, I think. I think the findings from these papers help to highlight crucial additional dimensions to these debates, that land use not only determines the sustainability of human life in the long term, but also that our relationship to land has a direct impact on individual and collective human health, and more specifically, our resilience to pandemics. For me then, a post-COVID better world demands, amongst other things, a better informed and a more democratic discussion of the kind of relationship to land on which our societies are premised, and a more sustained debate around how we balance the needs of environmental protection, food production, and human health. That's it, thank you.
Thank you, Leo. I guess now we have a lot of food for thought. So, Giorgio, please give a kind of summary and your opinion, and then we can open the discussion with Leonardo and Francesco.
Thank you, Dalila, very much. And thanks to the other speakers for the very insightful presentations and comments. We have heard a lot of ideas and a lot of food for discussion. So I'll just try to recap and summarize what we heard. From the first presentation by Francesco and Leonardo, we have learned about the potential role of air pollution and public green spaces or protected green spaces in lowering or increasing the vulnerability to COVID-19 and potentially to future pandemics. And then with the following discussions, we have dived into issues of equity, which is often cited into the three main crises that we are living in our time: the climate crisis, the biodiversity crisis, and the health crisis that has exploded in 2020. So I think these are two very important pillars of the new society and the new economy that we will have to build. On one hand, we have to know and we have to understand that we live in a very connected world. Every action on the ecosystem has some consequences on other people living possibly far away, even maybe living in future times, but it has practical and concrete consequences. And I think the world has started learning this with the pandemic. It was already mentioned by Leo how land use change in some point of the world may bring about very severe consequences for the health of people in other parts of the world. What was happening in China at the beginning of January immediately reverberated in Italy and in other European countries in just a 3 weeks' time. So these effects are starting to be played out very quickly, much more quickly than in the recent past. And then equity issues, these are really, really relevant. So on one side, we have what we have to do, what the policies have to bring about in order to take these connections into considerations. But on the other hand, we really have to work on equity. The impact of the disease have been very unequal in the world. We have heard from Nicoli and Philippe some examples of this. But also the impacts of our relationship with ecosystems and environment are very unequal globally. In Europe, in Western countries, the media were rich with stories of animals coming back to the city, coming back to town, something which in fact was already happening before, but maybe we were more ready to witness and to see it. So we were under the impression that, for example, the lockdown was at least beneficial for the biodiversity and for some aspects of our ecosystems. But even in this case, I'm using this just as an example, we have to assume a global perspective. And globally, there are a lot of worries, for example, expressed by the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, that the economic crisis that will hit most of all developing countries will reverberate on a decrease of money available for large conservation programs, for large nature conservation programs, especially in African states, in countries where money for conservation mostly comes from tourism and ecotourism, for example. These countries are going to have much less resources and going to devote much less resources to the conservation of nature, which in turn risks to start a negative circle, a negative feedback, a vicious cycle in which ecosystems are less preserved, biodiversity is less preserved, and this will bring about even more threats and more dangers for our nature. So I think Economy of Francesco is the perfect setting to think globally. Not many years ago, there was a saying, think globally, act locally, which is still true, but I also think that we have to start to act also globally, not only to think globally.
because the connections are so narrow and so solid that we really have to team up. Leonardo was saying that changes in the economic and political system are probably not happening from top down. I think I have to partially disagree with this. Some changes have to happen top down. The choices for the energy mix of a country, for example, the choices in how to protect ecosystems, how to manage a country's forest, and most of all, the choices on how to relate to other countries when it comes to these kind of choices. We live in an interconnected world, but our political structures are not yet interconnected in a global way. If some countries decide to destroy its own forest, then all the world will pay the consequences, but there is still no way, no practical way to stop this. So we also need to act globally as a community. There's often a dichotomy between individual action or bottom-up action and top-down or governmental action. I think there is also a third choice, and this is collective action. That is individual action, but teaming up in large groups. And this has the potential to shift policies, to elect politicians that will act more responsibly, and most of all, to solve equity issues, which are really, I think, at the center of all these problems, the climate crisis, the biodiversity crisis, and the health crisis. So it's not only a matter of saving the climate, it's not only a matter of saving the environment, and not only a matter of increasing public green spaces. These are very important things. But first and foremost, we need to focus on equity, on social justice, economic justice, climate justice. And then we will form a community that can think and act globally and try to tackle problems with the appropriate complexity. Thank you.
Thank you, Giorgio. I fully agree with you, and thank you for this talk. And we have 15 minutes to go, so if Leonardo and Francesco wants to comment on
yes,
such important words.
I will give the honor to finish to Francesco. I just want to react soon because you raised a lot of very good issues. I would say a general issue that you raised that I fully agree is that what we call the environmental sustainability problem has to be related to the problem of social justice, of inequality. We all know that the pandemic shock has increased inequality. And this is, of course, true. We have always worked at this level. Unfortunately, in this moment, there is a very strong sensitivity there is a lot of asymmetry, a lot of sensitivity to the environmental issue without the same sensitivity to the social issue. For example, the European process toward sustainable finance basically is all based around the environmental issues, circular economy, the green dashboard I showed you. And the only things that is needed for a green investment is to respect minimum safeguards social standard, which is a very light, a very light criterion. So basically, we are trying to do this, for example, with the ethical finance in Italy. We are launching, 13 years ago, we launched the first ethical investment funds. Now we are launching the first funds only centered on the dignity of labor and of the center of the human person. So focusing explicitly on the social side. So I definitely agree. What can we do? I think, and I hope that you will do as Young, we must work a lot on the side of the solution, not only on the side of the description of the problem. And we have many ways through which we can create solution. Of course, Giorgio was right to say, I'm emphasizing according to the situation, one of the other side, but being economic advisor, I of course believe that top-down issues are important, but the world is made of four ends, and the ends of active citizenship is political action, is political pressure on the government. And political pressure is not just what we vote once every 4 years. Political pressure is what we buy. If everyone buys sustainable products, politicians will take the consequence of that. So we have an enormous power because we vote every day. We vote every day. And so I would say three issues I want to raise. I put these. We can do three things. Measure things differently. That was said by Julia, if I well remember. Create and disseminate good practices. Fight for political change. About measuring things differently, that's something involving also Dalila. Dalila, don't hide, because I got your slide. What we did with Dalila and Lorenzo, in Italy, we created a new way of measuring things, not based on GDP, based on generativity, based on good life, So we went to a multidimensional well-being indicator, which is centered about a concept, which is the concept of generativity. People are happy whether their life makes sense, and their life makes sense whether what they do is affecting in a good way other people and even the future generation with the environment. So our slogan was, you can have income, health, instruction, but if you spend your day on the armchair sitting, you're not happy. So happiness has not to do with your endowment. Happiness has to do with your capacity of putting yourself into action. And so we measured this generativity of the different area of the country. So measuring things differently, let's do it. We are focusing in Italy on our political projects on this concept of multidimensional well-being and generativity. But as my colleague and friend Enrico Giovannini says, we won the statistical war. The statistical war has been won. People don't, there's not anymore only the GDP. There are a lot of well-being indicators. RO1 is the best, of course, but there are many others. We didn't won the political war, okay? The political war will be won when the statistical indicator that we create will be used everywhere. So that's the word that you young people of the economy of Francesco can help us to win. Other point, the good practice. Let's go again. This is our creature. What we are doing, we are identifying good practices, because how you can, so I'm talking now with the one, I don't remember the name, sorry. You discussed about racism, Philippe, I think, or whatever. Basically, how can you fight also these things? Of course, in your rule, but you have to create and disseminate good practice. So in Italy, we have a lot of cooperatives, a lot of companies who do worker reintegration, social rehabilitation, companies which are putting together people that in the stereotypes are not together. So we work a lot on these things, giving value to people, giving value to social, to people who are poor, giving value to people who are in difficulty. For example, we are proud of having a lot of companies working on jail reintegration of people who have been in jail. And we know that 70% of women who have been in jail and who work in jail will not go back when they get out of the jail. So but again, the good practice can get strength, can get power only if we vote for them. So we must change the way we buy. We must change the way we save. Otherwise, nothing will change. Nothing will change. So that's another point. And finally, with the political issue, of course, but the policy, I talked a lot about the policies. And for example, I want to connect with the point of the park, which was raised by Leo. This is very important. After doing this paper with Francesco, we transformed this paper into a policy challenge. What we can do, because can we create a park economics? Can we create an economy? It's not just a question of preservation of natural value. We need the ball hitting all the pins. So we need to have parks, but this park area or this municipality with the good quality of environmental resource must be also places where people can live, where people can create value, where people can get employed. So the issue is for us at the national and regional level in Italy, we created the projects which tries to see which kind of innovation, which kind of creation of economic value in sustainable way, employment can be done with this park municipality. So again, and this is my final point, which has also been the point of a lot of you, we have to put together all the things: environment, fighting inequalities, social policies. Okay, so the challenge is this: not just make an announce of what's going bad in the world, discussing and describing the tragedy. This does not help, or help in a very little part. 90% of our work must be finding the solution. And finding the solution means measuring things differently, creating good practice and disseminating good practice, voting with the wallet for good practice, and of course, doing advocacy for political action. Thank you.
Thanks, Leonardo, and thanks everyone for your comments. I'd just like to add one final comment. So I think that many of your comments, of course, raise the point that as many crises, COVID pandemic increased inequality in many different inequalities, if you want. But this was because there was a kind of mistake in our economy, a kind of problem. Our economy was ill because we have forced to the trade-off between health and the economy. So either we are healthier and we stay home and we respect the lockdown and so on, or we go to work and we run the economy and we are kind of safe on one hand, but unsafe on the health part. So this kind of trade-off is crazy and is a sign of the illness of our economy. But there are, as we have raised, and as Leonardo showed, there are some best practices that we can try to put to push to the policy debate, and this is what we have to do.
Thank you, Francesco and Leonardo, for your time, and also for having listened to our young guys and for having pushing forward the discussion. And I just would like to conclude saying that in our village on life and lifestyle, we are planning to do an action of economic democracy in line with what Leonardo was saying about the vote with the wallet. We are planning to do some activities to vote with the wallet and to spread this culture and to do this collective action that also Giorgio was mentioning. So we strongly think that this is the right way to do something as citizens and as young people. And we had some of the questions from the floor. We collected them, but we are out of time, so we will continue the discussion in the platform on YouTube. I just want to say thank you to Francesco and Leonardo, but also to our young participant and to Giorgio. And it was very nice to share with you this discussion. The next seminar is the July 10th with the Professor Ichi and Ellen Alford on business as human system, the blueprint for better business. So this is the next seminar, and thank you, everybody. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Dalila, Francesco. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Ciao. Thank you.